guys, Twin here and welcome back to Bordertown. So this is one of the last episodes of Bordertown. Actually, this is the last episode of Bordertown for probably about a month or so, as I do a bit of work on Springwood and also bring back Marble Mountain too. If you're familiar with my channel, I like to dip in and out of different projects depending on what I'm sort of working on at the time, and because we're going to be working on those projects, I'm just going to give Bordertown just a month just to simmer and just do its thing, and we'll jump back into Bordertown after that. So today's episode, because it is the last one, I did want to work on something that I've been holding off for a little while, and pretty much had to figure out what the downtown looked like before doing this. And now that I've also got a bit of an idea of where most of the suburbs are going to sit within Las Palmas, and now that I know where pretty much the road networks are going to go, I can start figuring out the light rail. So this is something that isn't taken from El Paso. So obviously, Bordertown is very much inspired by El Paso and Juarez. However, I've been taking quite a bit of inspiration from places within the southern states of the US, and Houston is just one of those places that I've really been floating around Google Maps, just like figuring out the parts that I really love about it and the things that I wanted to implement within Las Palmas. And one of those aspects that I really love about Houston is the light rail system, and there's like what I can tell, so I found this really great map that's pretty much shows where the light rail and the public transport networks operate within Houston, and this gave me some really great ideas for how I wanted the light rail system to operate within Las Palmas. So I'm taking quite a lot of ideas from this. In particular, I really love the way that this red line crosses the downtown and pretty much stretches from one side of the city to the other, which is something that I wanted to include within this build. But then there's also these other two lines that I will be also incorporating within Las Palmas, and definitely it's not going to be the same network because we have a very different structure within Las Palmas than Houston. However, I think just getting the general idea of how light rail systems operate in general. So something that I didn't realize, and this is something that I implemented within Marble Mountain in Montana City, is when I was creating that light rail system, I did a full city circuit which went around the whole downtown area, and a couple of people mentioned that trams and light rail don't really do a full circuit. They go from one place to the other, and that's pretty much it. They operate pretty much in just one line. And I didn't even really notice that. And, you know, that might be true for most places, maybe not for every, I guess, situation. However, that is definitely something that I wanted to include within Las Palmas, and especially because that is the case within Houston. So that was the general plan for this build, was to create 3 networks that went from one area of Las Palmas to the other, and nothing was going to be in a full circuit. However, there were some turnaround places for the light rail, and there was also some places where the rail will split, and one direction there'll be light rail and the other direction will go in like a completely different suburb. And which is actually what you can see me working on now. And again, taking lots of ideas from the light rail system down in Houston. There's a whole bunch of different ways that the light rail interacts with its environment, and I think that is something that you know, I wanted to incorporate. I didn't want to just have it stretching along the road. I did want it to go through parks and go through the downtown in a bit of a pedestrian path sort of a way, and also split off so that it wasn't just following the same route. And something that I did also want is I think I might change it to the green line, or it looks like it's going to be the green line. So I wanted this line to be probably the most extensive, to hit pretty much all the main locations within Las Palmas, you know, so the downtown, the interstate train station, and to really stretch probably the longest. And I think that one turned out really cool. So that one's probably going to stay generally how it is right now, and the others are just sort of figuring out how I want that to look. Now, this is the detail part, and I think I pretty much nailed this, and I'm pretty sneaky with the way that I actually make this happen. So in Houston, there is a light rail that stretches through the downtown, and The way that it goes through this road is just beautiful. There is this cobblestone and these gardens on the median strip, and there's pretty much just one lane of traffic, which then makes it just a little bit more chill along the roads. And it looks like that pedestrians just have a little bit more right of way, which I am always a massive fan on. So it's not just a solely pedestrian path, it is still a road where cars are still traveling along, but it's just not, it's pretty much taken the main roadness out of it, and it's just focused a little bit more on pedestrians and making a much more inviting environment for people who are probably shopping around here or idling and just looking at shops. So that's what I wanted to incorporate within this area. And I'm just so pleased with how it turned out. It's pretty much what I envisioned, but I really didn't know how I was going to achieve it, because every time I was basically painting down this road with the decals that I wanted, because they're all square, or the decals are square, they weren't really fitting in exactly. And I didn't really know how I was going to be able to achieve this. And I don't know if you saw how I did it. Basically, I have a couple of different roads that have cobblestone / tiles on them already, and I chose this one because I think it's got probably the best looking decals on it. And basically I just dragged that road and in just another location and copied the nodes and dragged them into this pre-existing road and just sort of sunk that road just a little bit underneath the two roads. So basically the two roads are meeting together, and the cars are driving on, I guess, the road that's connected up to the network, or like connected up to the other roads. And then this other road is just a little bit above that. And I know it's kind of hard to explain. I'm sure you probably saw me do it. But I think the result is really cool because it just gives the impression that this one area has this cobblestone, and it doesn't mean that I used any props when I placed it down, which is really nice. It's just a network, and that is something that I think I'll probably end up using a couple of other times within my other builds, because it worked just too nice. It was just too brilliant. And even where the pedestrian paths are, the pedestrian crossings are, they are just the sidewalks for that old road, and it just gives this really great look that those pedestrian crossings are just tiled now, which is actually sort of what I wanted to do in the first place. The only drama with this, and I don't really know how to fix it, you might have a better idea, but you can probably tell that there are some props that sit along that road, and they're just like some benches and some bins just in the middle of the road, and it looks stupid. But I don't know how to get rid of them. I think it's just the way it is, and I just have to deal with it. So if you can handle having some of those just sitting in the middle of the road, then yeah. Besides that, I think it turned out pretty cool. And just to make it really fit into place and to make it look like it is a little bit more molded to this environment, also using some decals just to sort of cover up a bit of or not just cover up, but to create the crosswalks in other locations. And yeah, it just turned out really, really cool. And I was pretty quick. You might have saw me, but I created a custom tram station, light rail station, I can say. I was taking, again, just ideas from the one in Houston. This is pretty much the sole inspiration for this tram station. And yeah, what I did is I just created a rooftop over the top of it because I thought that would probably be necessary, and just put down some benches and some fences as well, just to encourage people to basically use the crossings instead of just walking across the road. And something that I will end up doing probably off camera, and I've already done this, but the station's too short, and I always do this whenever I create custom stations or anything like this. I never measure it up against what the tram or the light rail looks like, and I gotta make it a little bit bigger. So yeah, that gets a little bit more extended where that garden is. And those flowers, they're just totally vanilla flowers that come with the Park Life DLC. I think that's probably one of the greatest assets that came with it. Those flower beds are just awesome. I use them for pretty much any decorative thing. I like to do that. And something else you see me doing is I am placing down some trees along the side of the road. Now, I know you can make the road have trees on the side of it, but I'm never a fan of the way that they look because for starters, like when trees are planted on the side of roads, they're not always just in this symmetrical way, and the trees are generally sort of bunched in different locations, or they're in one particular area, or they're not in a particular area. So I like to place them down myself, and obviously it takes more effort, it adds more props and trees to your count, but I much prefer that look. And I also wanted the lights around here to have a lot more of a just retro look to them, so I ended up removing the vanilla lights that come with this road and placed down my own ones, and yeah, looks tons better. This whole area, it's spot on. I really love it. And now moving on, I'm now just wanted to fill in this gap because it's just killing me, and I'm not going to film the entire part of this area because it's very repetitive, and honestly, you've seen me do stuff like this a million times before, so you'll see me just start working on it. And basically what I wanted to create was just the outskirts of a downtown, which is generally these lower commercial buildings, some office blocks, and also quite a lot of parking. So quite a lot of parking going in here. I'm going to do a lot of copy and pasting in terms of buildings and car parks. And because I have created this environment before surrounding the downtown, I'm actually just going to those locations and copying those buildings and just placing them down around here, not going to any detail work. It's pretty much just a copy and paste job. And I do that so often in my builds because a lot of these locations are just so similar, and there's no point going to all that detail because my cities are generally massive. I can't detail every little inch of these places, so it kind of makes sense just to copy little aspects that I like and do that. Although you can see me slightly detailing some areas, and the areas that I do end up detailing are areas that receive more attention than others. So this area in particular has a light rail right next to it, and light rail will receive a bit more attention in my videos / screenshots, so kind of makes sense to put a little bit more effort around those places. But generally other areas I just try to keep a little bit more low-key and save that prop count. Now I'm moving on to some of the areas outside of the city, and we're now getting into more of the residential districts of Las Palmas. And now I'm taking some ideas again from Houston, but this time of the light rail that stretches out of the city, and I really love the way that it splits up, which is something that I wanted to incorporate around this area in particular. And I'm especially going through this little park area that I thought would be kind of a cool little touch. So I decided to pull out one of my old tricks and have the light rail just stretch straight across this main road. This is something I pull all the time. It's one of my favorite aspects of I guess city planning, and I'm pretty sure I pull this move in every single one of my cities, which I'm not ashamed of. I love doing this. And I also really like it when it travels alongside houses or buildings, so I like to kind of create like a really tight sort of train network where it's just sandwiched between either like the road or buildings or just whatever, I always love it when like trains or light rails just don't have much room to, I guess, operate, and they're sort of wedged in between just very narrow spaces, and that is such a weird niche. I don't know why I always seem to do it, but I'm sure you guys like it too, because judging by the comments, people are always enjoy these sort of builds. And I do kind of feel sorry for these people who live right next to it because they're so close. It's right in their backyard or it's right next to their window. But I don't think this light rail probably travels quite as much, and it's probably not quite as noisy as other train lines. And for the houses, so we are still pretty close to the downtown, and basically the closer people are to the downtown, the closer people live to the downtown, those spaces are just jam-packed. And that's generally because it's more desirable to live closer to, the center of the city, and there's probably more history closer to the city too. So, these houses have probably been here for a long period of time. So generally, these places are subdivided, or there's apartment blocks on, these small blocks of land, and developers generally sort of will buy like a block and will wait for pretty much the whole block to sell up, and then they'll rezone it or something like that. But also a lot of the houses will, the people who, live in these private residents will generally subdivide these areas, or, have granny flats where they'll rent out, or they'll build bigger houses. So I'm trying to, incorporate that idea and just jam pack these backyards with either just like small units, or I'm even using those really great assets, those houses that Beard Monkey created for me for the Mexican side, because they fit in really beautifully around here. So they're sort of like creating backlots for these backyards. There's just proof all over the place. This is the same in Sydney as well, where people just like, basically the closer you get to the city, the smaller your house gets. That is generally how it works. And I've noticed this heaps as well, just flying over Google Earth. Somebody once told me that in the US that this isn't the case, like people don't put so much junk in their backyard, but honestly, you fly over anywhere and you can just tell that the closer you are to the city, the less space people generally have in terms of their backyards. So, you always try to just cram as much as I can into these houses when you're pretty close to the downtown. And then generally when we get further out, people's yards tend to get a little bit bigger. This last little bit of the time lapse, I'm working on some of the stations that sit around this area. I love the way that these stations turned out. I wanted them just to be alongside of this road, and I've just been copying those stations that I created before and just pasting them down here, because I think it kind of makes sense to keep the same theme as, well, the same theme for all the stations along this network. So I've just been copying that and just pasting it around here and just making some slight changes when necessary. And you can actually see me working on this line here. Something that I've noticed is that light rail lines seem to be a whole lot more chill than train lines, and generally it's totally fine to have paths and people just walking over tram lines, because I guess they can stop quicker and it's not such a big deal. But with train lines, you generally don't have people crossing them so close to the city. But I thought that made for a really good opportunity to have this path connecting one side of the station to the other, and just using some of these Ronix grass patches to create that grassed area, because one of the biggest struggles I have with this map theme is that the grass texture is still pretty dirty. It's not really like a nice lush grass theme, and that's really tricky when I want to create parks, and I don't have green grass to use, so I got to use these green patches that Ronix has made, and they're beautiful looking, they're fantastic, but they take up quite a bit of space, and they're not quite as flexible as just painting down some textures on the ground just using the themes. But that is pretty much it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is episode 16 of Bordertown, and we're going to be taking a bit of a break, but we'll be definitely back because there is so much more I want to achieve in this series, and so much more I want to build to. So about a month and then we're back. Something that you might not know is that I share these save games with my patrons. So if you ever want to get access to these save games, which a lot of people ask for, I give them to my patrons to say thanks for their support. So if you're interested in that, it's a great way to support me and also grab these save games. Another great way to show support is just liking the video. That helps out heaps, and your comments are just wonderful, so please keep them coming if you've got something to say. Do hit me up in the comments below. You can also follow me on Twitter, and I'm also on Instagram, and I've also got a Discord, which is a really great place if you want to get some advice or just have a chat, because there are quite a lot of active people on there, so you should definitely hit up that too. All those links are in the description below. But guys, that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next episode. See you later.